My name is Daniel Mercer, and last Christmas my own son decided to humiliate me in front of the entire family. He thought his words would cut me down, that I'd swallow the insult and smile through the pain. But here's the thing, sometimes the people who take you for granted forget just how much you've built without them. This is the story of how one cruel holiday remark changed everything for both of us. The dining room glowed under the warm amber light, casting reflections off crystal glasses and polished silverware. The smell of roasted meat mingled with the rich aroma of aged red wine, filling the air with a deceptive sense of comfort. I sat at the head of the table quietly watching. This dinner had been pitched as a celebration of the 10th anniversary of me buying this house. But from the moment I walked in, I knew it wasn't meant to honor me. Ava, my sister-in-law, emerged from the kitchen, lips painted in a deep shade of red, holding a glass of wine as if it were a prop in a performance. She had always known how to command attention, not just with her looks, but with her words, sharp, calculated, and perfectly timed. Ryan, her younger brother, sat to my right, fidgeting with the cuff of his shirt. The only person who seemed unbothered was Nora, an old friend of mine who had unexpectedly accepted my invitation tonight. But even she wore that faint look of someone quietly bracing for impact. After a few polite exchanges, Ava placed her glass down on the table with a soft clink. Her smile was that of someone about to unveil something important. I think this is the perfect moment, she began smoothly, to talk about the future of this house. The table went silent. I set my fork down, looking at her with the kind of patience that unsettles the impatient. The future, I said evenly. What exactly do you mean by that? Ava tilted her head as though explaining something obvious to a child. You've been here long enough, and because family should always come first, it only makes sense for you to sign the house over to Ryan. He'll be the legal owner, but of course you'd still be welcome to stay if you want. Ryan's eyes darted to mine. His lips parted as if he wanted to add something, but nothing came out. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my voice calm, almost conversational. And the reason for this? Generous offer. Her laugh was soft, but her eyes had the hard glint of someone who had already decided how this was going to go. Because, dear, it's better to handle things within the family before lawyers get involved. The air shifted. I could feel Nora's gaze on me, measuring my reaction. I gave nothing away. I didn't know it yet, but this was not just a dinner, it was an ambush. And Ava, standing there with that glass of wine, had just fired the first shot. She leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough for the words to feel personal, dangerous. Sign the papers, or I promise you won't like what comes next. I didn't answer Ava's threat right away. Let people talk long enough and they'll often give you more than they mean to. I simply lifted my wine glass, letting the pause stretch into something uncomfortable. That, I said, finally sounds like a conversation for another time. Ava's smile faltered just for a moment. She didn't like losing the tempo of a conversation she thought she controlled. Ryan cleared his throat, muttered something about just thinking about the future, but his voice lacked conviction. Dinner went on, but the mood had changed. The laughter was forced. Even the clink of cutlery against plates felt sharp, deliberate. I noticed how Ava avoided meeting my eyes after that, which told me she knew I wouldn't be as easy to push over as she'd hoped. After dessert, they left in a hurry, claiming some early meeting the next day. Nora stayed behind, helping me clear the table. She didn't ask what that little performance was about. She didn't need to. Instead, she said quietly, "You've got something on them, don't you?" I smiled faintly. Not yet, but I will. That night I sat in my study long after the lights in the neighborhood had gone dark. Ava had tipped her hand, which meant she was under pressure. No one pushes this hard unless they're desperate, and desperation leaves mistakes. All I had to do was find them. The first step was to check my property records. If they'd been bold enough to make that demand, I needed to be sure they hadn't already tried something without my knowledge. I logged into the county records portal, scrolling through recent filings. Nothing had changed yet, but then I noticed something else. A lien had been filed against the house 2 weeks ago. Not in my name, not in Ryan's, in the name of a shell company I didn't recognize. I leaned back in my chair, the pieces starting to shift in my mind. A lien like that was a chess opening. It meant someone was setting up for a bigger play. And I had a feeling Ava was behind it, using Ryan as her pawn. The next morning I called in a favor from an old acquaintance, Marcus, a retired investigator, who owed me for a case I'd helped him with years ago. I gave him the company name and told him to follow the paper trail. You think they're trying to tie up your property? Marcus asked. I think I replied they've already started. I just want to know how far along they are. By the time evening rolled around, Marcus had sent me the first batch of information. The company was registered under a holding group tied to Ava's cousin, someone I'd never met but whose name now sat in my notebook underlined twice. I was still flipping through the documents when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message. Ava's voice smooth but edged with a warning. I hope you're not digging into things that don't concern you. Remember, lawyers are expensive, and I can be very patient. I replayed it twice, not because I needed to hear the words, but because I was listening for the tremor she tried to hide. She was bluffing, and she was afraid. What she didn't know was that she just confirmed exactly what I needed. There was more to find, and now I was certain where to look next. Marcus didn't waste time. By the next morning, he sent me a neatly organized file, dates, transfers, and connections between Ava's cousin's shell company and several other suspicious entities. It wasn't just about my property. There were at least 3 other homes under similar liens, all belonging to older owners with no immediate heirs nearby. It was a pattern, and patterns were leverage. I spent the afternoon at my desk sketching it out, arrows, dates, and names forming a map of Ava's quiet little network. She wasn't just after my house, she was part of something bigger, and if I could tie her directly to it, she'd have more to worry about than whether I signed over my property. At 4 o'clock, I called Nora into the study. She sat down across from me, her expression guarded. This isn't just about you, is it? She asked. No, I said, sliding the papers toward her. It's about 3 other families, maybe more. She's targeting people who don't fight back. Nora's jaw tightened. So what's your plan? 2 steps, I said. First, I confirm every link. Then I make sure she knows I'm not one of her easy targets. If she's bold enough to push, I'll make her regret it. That night, I reached out to an old contact in the legal field, Diana Cho, a real estate attorney with a reputation for being as relentless as she was precise. I didn't tell her every detail yet, just enough to pique her interest. If I find proof of a coordinated property grab, I asked her, how fast can you move? As fast as you can drop the files on my desk, she replied. The next day, I drove to the county records office in person. Online searches could only take you so far. Some of the older, less digitized documents were still kept in dusty drawers. I dug through them for hours, finding small but telling inconsistencies, forged signatures, backdated filings, and notarizations from a clerk who, according to public records, had retired 5 years ago. It was enough to start a fire, but a fire needed the right spark. I got that spark the following evening. Marcus called me from a payphone he still preferred to keep certain conversations off the grid. Your daughter-in-law met with a man named Harris Lang today, he said. And why do I care about Harris Lang? Because Lang's the one who files all the paperwork for the shell companies. And get this, he's sloppy. I've got him on security footage walking out of a notary office with blank stamps. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the satisfaction settle in. Send me everything. Tonight. 2 hours later, the files arrived, photos, timestamps, and even a short video clip. Harris Lang was the missing piece I'd been looking for. Tie him to Ava, and her whole operation would unravel. I printed the clearest photo and set it on my desk. When I turned off the light, I left it there, where I'd see it first thing in the morning. But before I could even make my next move, the doorbell rang. It was past 10 at night. I opened the door to find a plain manila envelope on the porch. No return address, no markings. Inside were 6 glossy photographs, me taken from a distance, at the records office, the law firm, even outside my own house. And a single note typed in clean, cold letters. I stood in the doorway, longer than I should have, the cold night air, wrapping around me like a silent dare. The street was empty, no cars idling, no shadows moving. Whoever had delivered the envelope was either fast or careful, probably both. I carried the photos to my study and laid them out in a row under the desk lamp. Each one was framed with unsettling precision. They weren't just pictures, they were a message. We see you. We're ahead of you. I let the note sit there for a full minute before I tore it cleanly in half. Not because I wasn't rattled, but because the last thing I'd give them was the satisfaction of a visible reaction. Instead, I called Diana. They're watching me, I said plainly. Proof, 6 photographs, and a threat. Marcus. Probably not. He's too smart to leave a trail that obvious. This is Ava's style psychological pressure pushed me into making a mistake. Diana's voice sharpened. Mistakes are for amateurs. We're not amateurs. We agreed on two moves. She'd file a preliminary motion to freeze any property transactions linked to Harris Lang's companies, quietly so it wouldn't tip our hand too soon. Meanwhile, I'd pretend to slow down, make Ava think her intimidation was working. That night, I turned my study light off earlier than usual. If she had someone watching the house, I wanted them to believe I'd retreated. In reality, I worked in the dark, laptop screen dimmed, pulling every public record on Harris Lang's movements. I found his address, 3 phone numbers, and buried in a corporate registry his partnership with a J. Weaver. The name rang a bell. It took me a moment to remember why Jacob Weaver was Ava's second cousin, the one she claimed barely spoke to her. That lie alone was enough to tighten the noose. By the third day, my patience paid off. Marcus called, voice low. Lang's meeting Weaver at a coffee shop downtown in an hour. Want me to follow? No, I said. I'll go myself. I arrived early, taking a corner table with a clear view of the door. Lang walked in first, scanning the room like a man who'd been doing this too long. Weaver followed, wearing the smug grin of someone who believed they were untouchable. They didn't notice me, but I noticed everything: their folders, the way Lang kept one hand over a slim USB drive, the nervous glances toward the window. I took a few photos with my phone, just enough to prove they were in the same place at the same time. When they left, I stayed seated, letting them walk 3 blocks before I stepped outside. No tailing, not yet. That would come later. Back home, I sent the photos to Diana and Marcus. Within 10 minutes, Diana replied, "This is exactly what we needed. The court will love it." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the first real shift in momentum. Ava had made the first move, but I was about to make the one that would hurt. That evening, I called Ava directly. No pretext, no polite lead-in. "I know about Harris Lang," I said. There was a pause, barely a breath. "I don't know who that is." "Yes, you do. And I have pictures. So here's how this works. You have 48 hours to back off. After that, this goes public." She laughed. Too loud, too fast. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." The line went dead. For the next 2 days, there was silence. No visits, no new threats, no envelope on the porch. Then on the third night, as I returned from a late meeting with Diana, I found my front gate open. The latch wasn't broken, it had been lifted. Inside, the study door was ajar. On my desk, where the Lang photos had been neatly stacked, there was only one thing: a single house key. Not mine. And tied to it, with a strip of red thread, a tag with an address written in block letters. The address was one of the other elderly owners I'd found in my record search. I didn't touch the key for a full minute. It sat there under the desk lamp, the red thread swaying slightly from the draft, the address staring back at me in black block letters. It wasn't an invitation, it was a challenge. The address belonged to Mrs. Evelyn Cross, 79 years old, widowed, living alone. I'd seen her name buried in the same transaction logs as Harris Lang's shell companies. If Ava or Lang had gone after her, they were either sloppy or arrogant enough to think I wouldn't intervene. I called Marcus. They left me a key to Evelyn Cross's place. That's bait, obviously, but if I ignore it, they might move faster on her. "If you walk in blind, you could be walking into a setup." Diana's voice joined the call. "We don't take the key. Not yet. We make them take the next step." But the more I stared at it, the more I knew I couldn't just sit still. Evelyn had no idea she was on their radar, and I wasn't going to let her wake up one morning to find her life gutted the way they'd tried to gut mine. By dawn, I had a plan. Not a reckless one, a controlled risk. I'd go to the address, but not alone and not without insurance. Marcus would shadow me from a block away. Diana would be on a live call, recording everything from her end. When I arrived, Evelyn answered the door in a faded blue robe, clutching a mug of tea. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from arthritis. "Can I help you?" she asked. I showed her the key, careful not to cross the threshold. "This was left at my house with your address." "Do you know why?" Her eyes darted past me, scanning the street. I don't," she trailed off. A movement behind her caught my eye. A man mid-40s stepped into the hallway, sharp suit, casual smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Evelyn, you forgot to tell me we were expecting company," he said. "Lang. In her house." I smiled back, the kind of smile that says, I'm not surprised. You left something on my desk. Did I? His voice was soft, but the arrogance bled through. Yes, and you're trespassing in more ways than one. We stood there 3 feet apart, the air thick with unspoken threats. Diana's voice crackled through the hidden earpiece. Keep him talking. So I did. I asked about the shell companies, about Weaver, about his connection to Ava. He deflected, but every half answer was another breadcrumb Diana could use. When Marcus's text buzzed in my pocket, 2 men approaching from East Alley, I knew the meet and greet was over. I stepped back from the doorway. Here's how this is going to work, I told Lang. You and Ava are going to leave Evelyn Cross alone. You're going to unwind whatever scam you've set up here. And in return, I won't drop the photos and recordings I already have into a judge's lap. Lang's smile widened. You think you have leverage? I don't think. I know. The 2 men reached the porch. Marcus appeared from the corner camera in hand snapping shots before they could turn away. Lang's expression flickered, not fear, not yet, but the first sign of calculation. I turned to Evelyn. Lock your doors. Don't speak to anyone without calling me first. As I walked away, Lang didn't follow. Neither did his men. They just watched, weighing their next move. Back at my house, I spread the new photos across the desk, adding them to the file Diana was building. The picture was getting clearer. Lang and Ava weren't just targeting me. They were circling multiple elderly homeowners looking for properties they could flip through forged transfers. Evelyn was just one of several. That night, Diana called. I think it's time we stop reacting. We have enough to file the injunction and a criminal complaint, but if we push too soon, they'll scatter. Then we don't push yet, I said. We close the trap first. The next morning, I sent Ava a message. Short, direct. You're running out of time. Her reply came an hour later. So are you. By the time Ava's message hit my phone, the pieces were already in motion. 3 weeks of surveillance, 12 hours of recorded conversations, bank transfers, forged signatures, even a private email from Lang to a notary he'd bribed. Diana had packaged it all into a single brutal file. The beauty of it wasn't just the evidence, it was the timing. Tomorrow morning, the county court would open its docket, and the first name they'd see was mine, attached to a petition for injunction fraud charges and asset seizure. But tonight, I wanted to give Ava and Lang one last chance to hang themselves without my help. We met at an empty restaurant I'd rented for the evening. 1 table, 3 chairs. The overhead lights cast a pale circle in an ocean of shadow. Ava arrived first, black coat hair, sharp eyes, sharper. Lang came 5 minutes later, pretending not to be winded from rushing. They didn't sit right away. Predators don't like walking into someone else's cage. Why are we here? Ava asked. To finish this, I said. You've been circling people like Evelyn Cross, hoping no one would notice. I noticed. Lang gave a low laugh. You think you've got us figured out. You're not the first to try, and I won't be the last. But I will be the one who ends it. I slid a slim folder across the table. Neither touched it. Inside were glossy prints, Lang at Evelyn's house, Ava in the notary's office, the 2 of them with other clients whose homes now belong to shell companies. This goes public tomorrow, I told them, along with court filings, frozen accounts, and police interviews. Ava's smile was thin. You won't walk away clean either. You've been poking where you shouldn't, and you've been stealing from people who can't fight back. The difference is everything I've done is legal. Everything you've done isn't. The silence stretched. Lang finally reached for the folder, flipping through with feigned disinterest. But I saw it, the twitch in his jaw, when he reached the bank statements. We can make this go away, Ava said softly. No. You can make yourselves go away, I replied. I stood leaving the folder with them. Behind the front window, Marcus's unmarked sedan idled, dash camera rolling. A uniformed officer leaned against the hood, waiting for my signal. Ava's eyes darted toward the door. You called the cops. Not yet, I said. But when you walk out of here, they'll follow you. You can spend the next few weeks in custody, or you can spend them undoing every deal you've touched, transferring every stolen deed back, and refunding every cent you took. Lang leaned back, weighing the threat. And if we don't, then you'll find out how quickly your friends in real estate dump a liability. They didn't answer, but they didn't need to. I'd seen enough negotiations to know when the other side was calculating retreat. When they left, Marcus tailed them. Diane and I drove straight to the courthouse at dawn. The clerk stamped our filings before Ava or Lang could so much as call a lawyer. By midweek, injunctions were in place, accounts frozen, and a detective was sitting across from them in an interview room. It didn't end in a spectacular arrest on the evening news. It ended quietly with signed reversals, deed transfers, and restitution checks arriving one by one. Evelyn got her title back. Two other families got their homes, and Ava, she sold her condo within a month, disappeared to another city. Lang vanished into bankruptcy hearings. One evening, I found the red thread key again, still in my desk drawer. I took it outside, dropped it into a storm drain, and listened to it vanish into the dark. Some victories don't come with applause. They come with silence, the kind that means no one will ever try that game with you again. And that was enough. Some nights I still think about that Christmas morning, the look in his eyes when he thought I'd just take the insult and stay quiet. But I didn't, and I never will again. Justice isn't something you wait for. It's something you build brick by brick, even when it means dismantling the illusions of those closest to you. In the end, I didn't just reclaim what was mine, I reclaimed my self-respect. And maybe that's the real gift, knowing you'll never bow to injustice again.